in the middle of the desert, where a few years ago there was nothing but empty sand. An entire city now stands. Glittering glass towers, wide Africa's tallest building, and a government that is slowly moving its entire machinery here. This isn't a movie set, this is Egypt's new administrative capital, a project so ambitious that if it succeeds, it will overshadow one of the oldest capitals in the world, Cairo itself. And if it fails, it could leave an entire nation buried in debt for decades. The story begins in March 2015 at an economic development conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi stood on stage and made an announcement that stunned the world. Egypt was moving its capital. Cairo, which has been the heartbeat of Egypt for centuries, its streets carrying the history of the pharaohs through the Ottoman Empire, would remain the capital in name. But the actual machinery of government, ministries, parliament, the presidential residence, would shift to a brand new city, referred to for now simply as the new administrative capital, or NAC. The reasoning isn't hard to understand. Cairo's population has swelled past $20 million, and the city has struggled for decades with severe congestion, population explosion, urban sprawl, pollution, and aging infrastructure. In one of the densest cities in the world, where traffic jams stretch for hours and the infrastructure was never designed for this scale, the government faced two choices: try to rebuild Cairo from within, or start fresh somewhere else entirely. Sisi chose the latter. Now let's talk about scale, because calling this project big doesn't quite capture it. The city will sprawl across more than 700 square kilometers, twice the size of Brasilia, itself one of the most famous examples of a planned capital highways. Phase 1 alone covers 40,000 acres, roughly 162 square kilometers, including the government district, central business district, sports city, and 10 residential areas. And the final target? The city is designed to house 6.5 million people, a population roughly the size of a mid-sized country. The cost isn't a simple question, because different reports cite different figures. The government's own agency, the Administrative Capital for Urban Development, ACUD, estimates the total project cost at $58 billion. But some reports go even further. Newsweek and other outlets have reported that the total cost could exceed $100 billion if you account for the full timeline and all phases combined. Whichever figure turns out to be accurate, this is the largest single urban development project in the history of Africa. Nothing else comes close in scale. So what's actually being built on the ground? First, there's the iconic tower, which has become the poster child of the entire project. The tower stands 393.8 meters tall and was completed in 2024, now fully operational, Africa's tallest building. China has played a major role in building it, with the entire central business district designed and constructed in cooperation with Chinese companies. Around it, an entire central business district has risen from the sand, glass and steel towers gleaming in the sun, much like you'd see in Dubai or Shanghai. Except this one sits in the middle of the desert. Then there's the transportation network. Sisi's plan didn't stop at buildings. Connecting the whole city was equally critical. The new capital is home to the world's longest monorail system, running across the entire city. On top of that, an electric train line has been built connecting the new capital to eastern Cairo, and thousands of government employees now use it daily to reach their offices. And then there's everything a mega city builds to prove it belongs on the world stage. The city is now home to the largest mosque in the Middle East and Africa, a massive Coptic Orthodox cathedral, and the world's tallest flagpole. Plans also include a museum of Egyptian capitals, a national library, and a diplomatic quarter, where embassies of friendly nations from around the world will be based. There's even a home for sports fans. Missa Stadium, with a capacity of 93,940, opened in 2024, and now serves as the home ground for Egypt's national football team. On paper, this all sounds like a perfectly executed success story, but this is where the picture gets complicated. The first and biggest question is, where is the money coming from, and what's it costing the country? Egypt has been grappling with serious economic problems for the better part of a decade. Egypt's debt service ratio had already reached 38.5% by March 2022, and the situation has only worsened since. For fiscal year 2025 to 26, Egypt's government is projected to spend 65% of its entire annual expenditure just on debt payments. Think about that. 2/3 of the country's income going towards servicing old debt, not new schools, hospitals, or welfare programs. Against this backdrop, critics' biggest accusation is that projects like the new administrative capital, which they call vanity projects, are deepening this crisis rather than solving it. Many Egyptians see the $58 billion project as a waste of scarce public resources, especially when it's estimated that 1/3 of Egyptians live in poverty. While ordinary citizens face subsidy cuts and rising prices, the government is building the world's tallest flagpole and the region's largest mosque out in the desert. And that contrast troubles a lot of people. The second and even more sensitive issue is the role of the military. This isn't an ordinary government infrastructure project built by a civilian ministry. The company building this entire $58 billion capital is itself owned by Egypt's military. The International Monetary Fund, which Egypt has repeatedly turned to for loans to stabilize its economy, has repeatedly raised concerns about exactly this, in what's considered one of its bluntest reports to date. The IMF stated plainly that Egypt's military-controlled economic model is crippling private sector growth, deterring investors, and keeping the country locked in a cycle of debt and underperformance. The IMF also noted that military-owned companies enjoy preferential treatment, tax breaks, cheap land, and privileged access to credit, pushing private sector competitors to the sidelines. This isn't just a policy criticism, it's a question about how the country's resources are being allocated and who actually benefits. The third question, perhaps the most practical one, is whether people will actually move there and live. The biggest risk for any new planned city is becoming a ghost city, buildings standing empty with nobody arriving to fill them. In the project's early years, that fear loomed large, but by 2026, the picture is starting to shift. Today, 48,000 government employees commute to the new capital daily, many riding the electric train connecting it to eastern Cairo. All 34 government ministries, the Central Bank of Egypt, the Egyptian Exchange, and 18 of Egypt's 38 commercial banks have already relocated in Phase 1. The government's ambitions go further still. The plan is to relocate over 30 ministries and agencies to the new city, including Parliament and the presidential residence, with roughly 50,000 public servants expected to gradually make the move. The goal is to free Cairo from its administrative burden, letting it develop as a historical and tourist center, while actual governance runs from a modern, purpose-built city. But relocating government offices alone doesn't bring a city to life. The real estate market tells a more sobering story about how much work remains. So far, only around 1,500 families have moved into the new capital, and mostly into the limited number of high-end residential properties that have already been completed. That number is tiny next to the 6.5 million target the city is aiming for at full completion. Part of the reason is affordability. Properties in the new capital, especially in its early phases, have largely been designed for upper-middle-class and wealthy Egyptians. Critics repeatedly question whether there's real demand for the city on the scale being promised, or whether it will end up as an underutilized mega-development. Then there's the currency problem. The Egyptian pound has undergone significant devaluation, making currency risk substantial for USD-based investors. When a local currency is this volatile, attracting foreign investment becomes even harder, especially for a project whose returns are years, if not decades, away. So the question becomes, is all of this worth it? Can the new administrative capital genuinely reshape Egypt's future, or will it end up as an expensive statement and nothing more? The government's case is fairly clear. Officials claim the project will make a significant contribution to Egypt's GDP by 2035, boost annual economic growth by 1.5 to 2%, and attract $20–25 billion in foreign direct investment by 2030. They also argue that the new city will do more than serve as a symbol. It will create hundreds of thousands of jobs and generate value from previously underutilized desert land. By 2026, the picture is getting sharper. the city is gradually transitioning from a construction site into a functioning capital. The government is operational, parliament is running, international universities have opened, and foreign embassies are establishing a presence. The real estate market is shifting too, as the city moves from construction to operation in 2026. Sectors like healthcare are seeing major expansion, with facilities like the new Administrative Capital Hospital becoming one of the largest medical institutions in Africa and the Middle East. But this transition isn't perfect, and it isn't free of cost. Every ministry that relocates, every family that moves in, stands on top of the same debt that has burdened Egypt's economy for a decade. Repeated IMF agreements, in subsidy cuts, and currency devaluations. All of it is part of the same larger question every megaproject eventually faces. Does the immediate cost justify the long-term benefit? History offers plenty of comparisons. Brazil built Brasilia in 1960, a purpose-built capital that eventually succeeded but weathered plenty of criticism along the way. Myanmar built Naypyidaw, which to this day is largely considered empty. Kazakhstan built Astana, which gradually developed but still lags behind its population targets. Egypt's NAC dwarfs all of them in scale, and that scale is simultaneously its greatest strength and its greatest risk. So the real question isn't whether the NAC can be built. The iconic tower already stands, ministries have already relocated, and trains are already carrying thousands of people there every day. The real question is, will this city become a self-sustaining, thriving place that people genuinely choose to call home? Or will it remain indefinitely a government project that survives only through continuous state funding and political will? And there's an even bigger question behind that one. When millions of citizens across the country are struggling to meet basic needs, will a shining new megacity rising out of the desert actually improve their lives? Or will it end up being a symbol meant to show the world that Egypt is progressing, while everyday life in Cairo's crowded, aging streets stays exactly the same? For now, the answer isn't clear. The iconic tower stands gleaming in the desert sun, a symbol that can be read two ways, as a monument to ambition, or as a warning of what happens when dreams grow so large, they drift away from the reality on the ground. Whatever the outcome, one thing is certain. Cairo, which has been Egypt's heartbeat for thousands of years, is for the first time sharing its power with a brand new purpose-built city. And over the next decade, it will be fascinating to watch whether this desert-born dream becomes a living, breathing city, or simply another expensive promise left unfinished. If you enjoy stories about the world's most ambitious infrastructure and megacity projects, subscribe and stay with us, because in the middle of the desert, beneath the ocean, and in corners of the world you'd never expect, the next great engineering story is already being written.